And welcome to Clay to Canopy, the show where I attempt to make just about everything from the ground up. In today's episode, I am making these spinach calzones, and they are completely from scratch. All of my vegetables and herbs came directly from my garden. The dough was made with the sourdough start that I have been curing for over a month now, and so let's go do this. So the first thing I need to do to make my calzones is to prepare my dough. I have some yeast here that I've had going for since, April 9th was when I started it. This is my sourdough wild start. And I have been feeding it lately some whole wheat flour after I got it going with the basic bread flour. And I used the very simple method of 1 tablespoon of flour to 1 tablespoon of warm water. I repeated that every 12 hours for the first 3 days. And that basically doing it every 12 hours for the first 3 days accelerated my process, so I didn't have to wait a full week. And then after those 3 days, I went to the method of reserving only 1 tablespoon of that and adding fresh flour and water, and then utilizing the remaining part. In order to use this, I need to do just that. And here I have 3 tablespoons of warm water, and to that I'm going to go ahead and add some more of my whole wheat flour. The same thing, 3 tablespoons. And I'm going to take a tablespoon of my wild yeast. I don't know if it's called yeast. I don't know. I'm new to bread making. Okay, and then I'm going to add that in here. Mix all of this up. This is going to become my new starter. Transfer my label. And now I can get on with using this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and add the remaining amount into my bowl here. And then to this, I'm going to be adding 1 cup of my whole wheat flour and 1 cup of my bread flour. Aside. And I have 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And I have a teaspoon of sugar, which I'm going to add now. And then I have filled 2 cups of water, but I'm most likely only going to be using 1 cup and maybe just slightly over that 1 cup. I'm going to start pouring in only a half a cup right now. And then using my hands, I am going to work this. I'm just kind of lightly fluffing to try and pull that dough together. I realize I'm cheating on Scarlett right now, and I have used Scarlett to make dough. In case you don't know who Scarlett is, Scarlett is my KitchenAid mixer, and I've used her to do this part of the dough before, but you need to feel it, and that was part of what was lacking when I used her to do this process. And so I found that it's best for me to just throw my hands in it. I'm just going to slowly add water until I get it to come together. Starting to come together to where I can start doing a knead. I would normally just dump this out on my kitchen counter and do my kneading. Though I have sanitized my shop, I do not want to dump my dough onto it and do it from here. Just under my 1 cup mark. Let's see if I can get to a consistency I'm happy with. The whole wheat flour is a bit heavy. It could use with a little bit of expansion, so you want to have a little extra water than you would if you're using just the bread flour. So this is a little too wet for my liking. I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle this with a little bit of flour. I don't want an overworked dough, so I got to be careful here. Actually pretty close to where I want to be. Alright. My hand is ridiculously filthy. I'm going to wash it quick and I will be right back. Okay, now I have my larger bowl, I'm going to spray that with some olive oil and a little bit of flour so that it doesn't quite stick. Now I'm going to set my dough in here so that it can rise. I'm going to let it sit for an hour to do its rise, and then I'm going to come back in, re-knead it, and add my salt. That is 1 teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt. You could just use whatever regular salt. I'm going to cover this and seal it pretty tight with plastic wrap, and then I will be setting this somewhere warm. And for me right now, it is probably going to go onto the empty greenhouse plant rack that we have, because we have warming pads. The plants that were on there are out getting acclimated to the sun. This is a perfect opportunity for me to stick this on there. Well, while I'm waiting for my dough to rise, I'm going to begin some prep work on my filler that's going to go inside. Just went and picked some fresh herbs from the garden. I picked some thyme and some oregano that I want to throw into the filling itself. And I also have, this is 12 ounces of this New Zealand spinach that I have grown in the back. I defrosting one of my tomatoes from last year that I had cored and froze. And then I also grabbed some rosemary. I decided that I'm going to chop it up and throw it in with my salt that's going to go get kneaded into the dough. We didn't have much luck with the garlic. We replanted the garlic. I saved what about to begin to start rotting, and I caught it beforehand, and then I have one other bulb, and then that's pretty much all we had for garlic. So I'm going to be using this also inside the filling to begin, and I'm going to start off with my garlic. And I want to finely chop my garlic. I don't trust the smashing method because texturally right now is a little bit more like an onion than it is like garlic. I'm going to go ahead and get my pan on here and get it warming. Off to my whisk bowl. Add some olive oil spray. I'm going to save the garlic, go in with the tomato. And so first, I am going to start chopping up some of my spinach here. It's going to cook down, but I don't want these big stringy bites, so I'm just going to loose chop it. Really got to cook down my spinach because I don't want extra moisture leaking out in the middle of my calzone. It'll could possibly bust a hole in that calzone. And throw in a bit of salt. And while that is busy cooking down, I'm going to go ahead and begin chopping my ingredients for the sauce base that's going to go into the mixture of my calzone. For that, I'm just going to take my oregano. And my thyme. This is almost cooked on. What I'm going to be doing after this is cooked up is I'm going to drain this, and that way I can get rid of any of the excess liquid. Now in that same pan, I'm just going to add some more of that cooking spray and get started cooking up a little bit of a sauce. I love to keep on hand just these small bottles of wine. I have a red that I usually keep, like a Merlot and a Chardonnay, for cooking because, that way I don't have to open a giant bottle of wine if I'm only using it for a small recipe. So I'm going to be adding that in a moment. And there we go with the tomato and my garlic from the garden. Everything's from the garden. Everything today except the cheese. and the wheat, okay? I know I have my friends are giving me a hard time about whether or not I was gonna grow my own wheat for bread, and I totally would if I had the space, because I am that kind of person. But no, the wheat is not harvested from my garden. And I'm just gonna simmer this down, let this cook up. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of salt into this, and some fresh ground pepper. And then let's get those herbs in and smells amazing. There is nothing like homegrown cooking. Just adding in the wine now. 1/4 cup ish. Alright, I'm gonna let this cook down while I go drain my spinach. So went in and I grabbed some Kalamata olives while I was draining the spinach, and I grabbed some water. I am gonna add a little water and let this cook off a bit. A friend of mine is giving me a hard time about not redoing my recipes before I try them out on camera. The thing is that I learned to cook from an Italian mama who was always the instruction was a little of this, a little of that. So for me, when I'm cooking, it's kind of a feeling thing. You know, I could practice a recipe 100 times and have that one off time, and it end up being a little bit different that day. This particular tomato did not have enough juice this time, so I needed to add a little bit of water. Tomorrow, if I use a different tomato, put a little bit more liquid in it, and I didn't need to add the water. So I'm not necessarily making it up as I go, but it's kind of a feeling thing. Adding a little bit of water to create a sauce here, and in the meantime, I'm going to chop up some calamatas. Don't waste the juice. There we go. So add some Kalamata juice. I think I put that wine in way too early. It's alright. Might have to just throw a little more in. I'm really just having this liquid to break down my tomato here. In the meantime, might as well chop up that rosemary. Rosemary can be very potent, so I gotta be careful not to overdo it. Believe it or not, this took nearly an hour. Dough is almost ready to be kneaded again. I'm gonna give it a taste, see if it needs more wine. Alrighty, give me a tasting spoon. Yeah, I'm gonna go in with a little bit more wine. Perfecto. Okay, I'm gonna shut it off, set it aside because the residual heat will finish cooking off that extra liquid. And we're gonna move on to re-kneading this. And I wanna save this plastic because it's gonna need another hour of that for the rise. This time I'm gonna go ahead and dump my salt and my rosemary in. Alrighty, I'm going to set this aside for at least another hour. I'm going to check on it and see if it's risen enough for where I want it to be. If it's not, then I'm going to let it rise for 2 hours. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add. I'm going to mix this up and let it marinate, and when it cools down, I may just throw it in the refrigerator and move on to prepping my cheese. I don't have pre-shredded mozzarella. I do have a chunk of mozzarella that I had sitting by that needed to be used. I'm going to go ahead and shred. That's probably good. The thing I love about this little grater is it has a lid. And we're good to go. Alrighty, time to finish things up. I'm going to prep my cookie sheet here. I'm going to half my dough. Just using my hands here. I'm going to stretch it out a bit. Okay. I'm gonna let these set up while I preheat the oven. These will get a little bit more of a rise, also get a bit of a hardening over. This is essentially a pizza dough. I'm going to preheat at 375 and then I will bake this between 25 to 30 minutes. Yeah, so let's go. All right, you guys, here they are. They are finished. And you know how we do here at Clay to Canopy, so here we go. I will say one thing. I should have drained a little bit more of the liquid because I did have a bit of an explosion, but the dough is nicely cooked. So here we go. I'm glad I did not overdo it with the rosemary. It's just subtly there. This is pretty incredible. I've made calzones many times before, but this is the first time I've used primarily all of the ingredients from the garden. The spinach, the tomato, the herbs that are from here are all organic and all homegrown. And the garlic, it's a nice flavor. I don't want to sound like that person, but honestly, I think this is one of the best calzones I've ever had. Not because I made it, but because these ingredients were homegrown. Okay, you guys go try this. Before you do, please like, share, and subscribe if you have not done so already. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon. I'm about to go devour at least one half of this thing. All right. Bye.